Welcome back for another video. In this video, we're going to be going through tutorial 6, chapter 6 tutorial. And let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that this uses is it uses a template that is in metric. We already went over how to change a template to metric. So if we enter a part drawing and if we go to Tools and Document Settings, we can change our units right in here to millimeter and kilogram, which is essentially what we want for metric. Hit Apply, and we're now drawing in metric. The other way, if I close this out, just from the start, if you go to New and I hit New here, I can click on this tab and you can see I was already in there. But normally I'm in US and I just click on Standard. Well, here I can click on metric and I can just do a standard IPT in millimeters. And then if I go to tools, just to double check, I should be in millimeter and kilogram. So it's another way to start a drawing in metric. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this tutorial, I'm going to kind of breeze through it a little bit. I might skip a few things here and there that we've reviewed in other videos. And well, anyway, let's go ahead and begin. So to start off, the first thing it has you do is it has you just draw kind of some basic lines. So we're going to get started by doing that. I'm going to hit Sketch, and I'm going to do this in the XY plane. And I'm going to create the lines that it's asking. Looks like it has something kind of like this. Whoops. One note that it did make is that they are all parallel or perpendicular. So we're going to make sure that we get those constraints. Whoops, not doing so good at it. We're going to make sure that we get those constraints while we're kind of sketching this out. Looks like this one extends a little bit further. It doesn't really matter that much. The point of this tutorial is really just to kind of show you how you can adjust geometry and you can apply some constraints and things like that. Alright, so let's go to the next page, and it has us drawing a circle. So I'm just going to draw a circle here, random size, telling us, okay, so we want to create something that's coincident. So I'm going to make sure that I have my coincident command and coincident to that line. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The next thing is we know that this is out of character. It's not the way that it should be. So you kind of can take this and you can stretch and just change where the positions of these lines are. And for this one here, I'm going to need to create a tangent command. So I'm going to make that tangent. And I'm actually going to bring that back a little bit because we went over the trim command. We didn't go over the extend command. So I want to make sure I'm using the extend. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this to here. And I'm going to actually add a coincident command and make that coincident to there. Alright, moving forward. Okay, we already put the tangent on there. Okay, so it has us adding some dimensions now, and it has us using the extend command. So the extend command basically is just going to extend this line to the next piece of geometry that it sees. So I'm going to use extend, and I'm going to hit this, and I'm going to hit enter. Whoops. It just keeps extending if I hit enter. I shouldn't have hit enter. So let me undo that and redo that again. So extend, okay. And then I'm going to hit escape. And there it extended it to that edge. Alright, the next thing it has us doing is adding a dimension from here to the center. And it looks like it's saying it wants that to be 22.553. So definitely making this thing a little smaller than I started out with. And of course I did that out of order. You know, it has you do this. Like I said, I'm kind of moving through this pretty quickly. Okay, so once we've extended that, it has us putting this in line with this line. So the center of this circle should be in line with this. It does that by us dimensioning it. So there's a couple different ways. We learned that we can use this horizontal command to do that. We can also dimension it and just put a 0 in there. And that will constrain it as well. Okay, next thing we're going to do is add some more dimensions here. So this needs to be 17.626. And that looks pretty good. And then it wants us to use the auto constraint command. So we're going to hit apply and just see what that does. So it gives us a lot of stuff here. And what they're using this for is just to kind of show you that you can use this to get an idea of what all you need yet. So I'm going to hit remove to get rid of those. And we're going to add some more dimensions. So I'm going to hit done. And we're going to add this one, which is 7.726. Move that so we can actually see it. Oops. Okay. And we've got one here. This is 5.912. This here is to this point, which is 19.929. And we need to dimension this, which is 4.984. And we need to trim this. All right, so essentially that's what we end up with. So that looks pretty good. Actually, it doesn't look quite like the drawing, which I find interesting. Part of me wonders if this is actually calling out a radius dimension rather than a diameter. So let's try that. So let's make that 4.984. So that actually looks a little better. So it is calling out a radius rather than a diameter. It doesn't specify that though, so you kind of got to look at it and see that. All right, so next we're going to add some fillets. We're going to add a 2mm fillet all around here. So there, and then here and here. And that looks, oh, missing one here. So that looks good. Okay. So I'm going to hit enter, escape. All right, so we still need 2 dimensions. So this thing is constrained, but it's not constrained in terms of where it's at. Now the book's going to have us use a lock command, which basically locks it in place, so it gets rid of those 2 dimensions needed. It's saying this is where it's at, but it's not dimension. So I really don't like that. Generally what I do is I'll constrain, or I'll make a point coincident, like the center of the circle coincident with the origin. But since we're following the book, we are going to just use the lock command, and I'm going to pick the center of that circle. And now we are fully constrained. Okay, so it's going to have us finish this sketch, and we are going to extrude this thing. And 5.0. All right, so we have, I think I accidentally hit 50. No. 5mm, yeah. Okay, just looks a little thicker than what I thought it would. Okay, so next we are going to edit the sketch. So what it's going to have you do is going to have you edit this sketch, and just double checking that 5mm. Just looks a little goofy. Looks a little thicker than what the other part looks. I think what they were showing us in the other part is the larger dimensions. That's why. Ah, I skipped a step. So let's edit those dimensions. So let me go back into Sketch. Somehow I missed this. So we're changing the dimensions, and we're making this much larger, 200. And this one is 45. This one is 20. This one is 180. Oops. 180. Okay. So let's undo a couple of these dimensions so that we can do these first. 180. This one is 120. This one is 40. This one is 50. And now we can update these. So that's 45. That was 20. They all look good. Okay, so that part looks pretty good. So we're going to hit finish now. And that looks a little more the way it should. All right, so I knew something didn't look quite right. All right, so we're going to edit the sketch now. Again. And it has us drawing a rectangle and just adding a circle on here and hitting finish. And then we're editing this extrusion. So really all we're demonstrating here in this tutorial is just that when you extrude something, you have to pick each section of it if it's sectioned off. So we can extrude that whole thing. Now, the problem is we can only extrude this the same distance that we're extruded at. These both have to be extruded the same distance. Otherwise, you would have to create a new sketch and create it as a different feature. And I also can't create a cut and a union at the same time, or a base solid at the same time. So basically, that's what it's letting you know there. Now I'm going to just get out of that, just leave that the way it is. And next, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create another sketch, and we're going to learn how to use the project geometry, which we've used to project our center point or our origin point a couple of times. So I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to select project geometry and select that face. And now what we're going to do to get a cut, we're going to create an offset, and I'm going to select that, and we're going to make it 15.0. Now, what this does, this makes the offset constrained to the outside. So if I change the outside, it will always offset 15 thou from there. You know, as opposed to creating just regular geometry around here and then dimensioning it. Since it's an offset, it's always going to adjust that if you adjust the outside size. So we're going to hit extrude, and I'm going to say through all, and hit OK, and there we go. There is our gasket. Of course, I would name this as, oops, outside extrude. Darn it. Always have trouble clicking on these. Inside cut. Okay. And then what it has us do here, after we extrude everything, it just tells us, okay, let's change the overall height of this thing just to see what will happen. So I'm going to change this. Let me do this. We're going to do, actually, I think I need to be clicked on here. Where is my show dimensions? There it is. And let's change this to 150. 0. Enter. Okay, so it shows us what it looks like. Great. Now I need to hit this update, local update. And you can see there that the outside looks correct. So it did make it the right shape, and of course it continued the offset to make sure that it stayed 15 millimeter. If I had just drawn this in here without doing the offset, this bottom part would be very thick on the gasket, so it wouldn't have updated the inside to be 15 millimeter away. It would just be whatever it was dimensioned to. So that is all for this tutorial. It was just kind of to show you how to use your project geometry and the offset command. That's all. So if you have any questions, you can always see me during class, or of course during my office hours.